containers as drinking vessels for cacao. And we know this because there is an inscription around the rim which contains the cacao glyph. Well, I will come to the cacao glyph in a minute. The Maya also had books. Books were written on paper, on bark paper. Unfortunately, all of the books are lost because of the tropical climate, and only 4 books have survived. The tropical climate and the burning by the Spaniards. When the Spaniards came in the 16th century, they thought these books would only contain devilish material and texts, and so they did not have a lot of trust in these books, and in order to missionize the Maya and to make them good Christians, they burned these books. And fortunately we have 4 books left, and we know that these books were painted on a strip of bark paper and then folded like a leporello or like an accordion. And you will see a copy of a Maya book in the exhibition upstairs. And the Maya were a literate civilization with a sophisticated writing system and highly developed astronomy. They could have their astronomy and their calendar only because they had a numbering system, which is actually quite simple, much simpler than anything else in the antique world, where a bar would represent a 5, and a dot is the number 1, so this is 6, and number 13, and which number is this? This is a 20. This is a number 20. The Maya also had a positional system. They introduced the number 0. This flower sign is the number 0, and it means that there are 0 positions of 1 and 1 position of 20. You have to understand that the Maya did not count in tens as we do. They counted in 20s. So the next higher position would be the 20s. The number 25 would be a dot on top and a number 5 on the ground, to say 5 times 1 and 1 times 20. And the next position would be the 400s. The next higher position would be the 8000s. So it continues in 20s. And with this, the Maya scribe could write a date in the Maya calendar, in a so-called long count date. I'm not going into all the detail here, but we can decipher such a date because the Maya scribe recorded in such an inscription all the days which have elapsed since the creation of the universe. In Maya thought our present universe was created in August 3114 BC. And Maya scribe would say, well, so and so many days have passed since the creation of the universe. And we know how to calculate these dates. For example, this inscription corresponds to the 10th of April, 756 AD. The Maya hieroglyphic writing system has been deciphered over the last 30 or 40 years. And we now know that Maya writing consists basically of 2 simple signs. We have syllables. For example, this is the syllable for ba. Here you see the B and an A. This is ba. So the syllable for be has not been deciphered yet. This is bi, bo, bu. Cha, che, chi, cho, chu. Cha, and che, chi, cho, chu are not yet deciphered. And then they also had vowel signs. And here are some more syllabic signs: ha, he, ho, hu, ha, he, ho, hu, ka, ke, ki, ho, hu, ka, ke, ki, ho, hu, and so on. And we see syllables. The Maya could combine these syllables and could write any word in the language. And every aspect of the grammar. But they did not only have syllabic signs, they also had word signs. It's very similar to Egyptian writing, actually. And for example, this is a sign for throne. This is a sign for sky. This is a sign for to take. Cham. This is the word ahau, which means king. And the Maya could combine word signs and syllabic signs to write an inscription. Now this, for example, a scribe could say, well, I want to write the word for ahau, for king, and he could use the stylized head of a king to write this word. But he could also decide, well, I want to write the word more explicitly with 3 syllabic signs, then with a vowel sign a, the syllable ha, and the syllable wa. A, ha, wa. Then this would be another way to write ahau. And the last vowel is not pronounced. And we know this, how the system functions. We can read most, not all of my hieroglyphic inscriptions. This is just an example of how to translate a hieroglyphic text. On the day 3 kid, I can read it in Maya. Ushkib hun uniu mukach tam chen. Ush winikab itzamnach awil yil washak al ahautak. Utzaka. And here you see also the translation. And Maya texts are read from left to right and in double columns. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Like this. And this is a complex Maya hieroglyphic inscription from Palenque. And in blue I have marked those glyphs which we cannot yet read. So most of this can actually be deciphered. But I'm not going to read this for you because it would take too much time. And I think I will go over this. And writing was very important for the Maya. Scribes were very often members of the royal families. Scribal offices were located in palaces. Scribes were attached to royal dynasties because the principal task of scribes was to write down the history of the Maya families, of the royal families. The scribes were so prominent that they even were allowed to write down their signature. What you see here in the background of the stela, very finely incised, is the signature of the artist who actually carved this monument. And this is something extraordinary, which allows us now to identify the names of Maya artists, to identify schools and workshops in particular styles. Maya hieroglyphic writing is very ancient, much more ancient than we thought until a few years ago. In about 2000 and I think in 2003. By accident, this archaeological site San Bartolo was discovered in the north of Guatemala, and here in San Bartolo, a set of incredible mural paintings was found. Mural paintings which date back to the year 100 BC, and what made us so excited about these mural paintings is not only the iconography and the motifs which are painted here, but that there are already painted hieroglyphs. And we think that Maya hieroglyphic writing begins at approximately 500 BC, and there is a continuous tradition of the use of the hieroglyphic script until approximately until the Spanish conquest. So we have 2,000 years of literature here on the American continent. That's something which people very often do not remember. Not only Europe has writing, not only the Near East, but the American continent was literate. We'll go over this. Let me jump over this a little bit. Yes, painted ceramics, drinking vessels for cacao, which we see here, with incredible iconography. And this is a hieroglyph for cacao, which you also will see on some of the ceramics in the exhibition. This is a syllable ka, and the fish head, which you see here, is another form of the syllable ka. So this is ka ka, and this is a syllable for wa, ka ka wa. The word cacao, which we still use today, is an ancient Maya word. It's a word which has migrated, which has come to us through the Spaniards, and we still use it today. Maya cities collapsed, as I said, in the beginning by 800. Maya cities were facing enormous political problems, rivalry between kings and between royal families, an escalation of warfare, finally droughts, severe droughts, climate change. Agriculture was not possible anymore. Cities were abandoned. By 900 AD, Tikal may have looked like this. A city overgrown with vegetation. Then by 1000 AD, nobody was living in Tikal anymore. The city was completely overgrown and had to be rediscovered by archaeologists in the 19th century. But Maya civilization, Maya culture did not end. As I said, the Maya migrated from these cities, such as Tikal, to the north, to the Yucatan Peninsula, where they continued to build architecture in the 13th and 14th century. This is the city of Mayapan, which was a Maya capital just shortly before the Spaniards came. And the Spanish conquest took place approximately 1520. Guatemala was conquered. Yucatan was conquered in the 1540s. But until 1697, the last Maya kingdom in Guatemala was conquered by the Spaniards. And the process of conquest never ended. There were always places in Guatemala and Mexico where the Maya retrieved and where they fled in order to escape Spanish colonial administration. And the Spaniards introduced the Christian faith. They made the Maya, at least on the paper, to Christians. Maya were baptized, but in fact they continued to practice their ancient religion. But Christian gods were renamed, or they were interpreted. The Christian saints were interpreted as Maya gods. Jesus, for example, for the Maya is the maize god, and the Virgin Mary became the moon goddess. And so the Maya may go to churches, but they will not pray to our deities and to our Christian God. They pray still to the ancient gods. Even during the colonial period, the Maya continued to write in their languages. The codices were burned, but the oral traditions continued. But many Maya had learned to write in Latin script, in Latin letters, and secretly wrote down their knowledge, even knowledge about their gods and about the calendar, which was still remembered in these books. So we have Maya books from the colonial period, from the 17th, 18th, and 19th century, with literature written in Mayan languages, in this case in the Yucatec Maya language. And this helped to preserve Maya languages until today. And Maya culture is very vivid and present until today in Chiapas, in Guatemala, on the Yucatan Peninsula. People speak 30 different Mayan languages, and in spite of colonialism, the Maya have always been resilient, resistant, and very proud of their culture, and they are still there to greet you and to share their culture. Thank you very much.
Get the house lights up a little bit, Emma, that'd be great. Floor lights, house lights, floor lights. So we have some time for some questions before we head up. Is anybody itching to get upstairs, or anybody have any burning questions? He's really set it up really wonderfully well. You're going to recognize and be grounded in a lot of what you're seeing upstairs has been explained here. So I'm really grateful for this. First time I've seen it, so it's really going to give you a great orientation to being up there in the galleries. Are there any burning questions? Or sure, there you go.
Yes, good evening, Doctor, and thank you for coming to the Grube Museum. Yes, my question is, did the Royal House treat the common people as artisans, or were they treated as slaves like in Egyptian times that built the pyramids and that whole story? How were they? Because someone had to build these places, so were they treated like artists and artisans, or?
That's a very good question. Thank you very much. The Maya all this monumental architecture was built by commoners, and they did not build these temples as volunteers. They had to pay taxes. This was a form of tribute or taxes which they paid to the royal house, and in return they would receive protection and identity, and probably kings were regarded as personifications of deities, and therefore there was also a kind of, let's say, an emotional closeness. People, I don't think they would be voluntarily helping, but we know that there were administrators which organized the workforce.
I got. Oh my God. Okay. We're gonna started the ball rolling. Yes, indeed. You go that side. Okay. So we're gonna. Where was it here? Just. Oh, now no one's putting the hand up.
Don't be shy.
Have they been able to do any DNA analysis on some of the skeletons that they found in the Maya culture?
Yes, DNA analysis has been done and is an important part of our research and helps us to figure out more about family relationships between nobles and also, of course, in commoner houses. It helps us to say, well, which people in these commoner houses were, how were these people related to each other?
Next here.
Hi. My question is more related to the work that you do. Have you ever come across any resistance from locals or the government, especially with your LiDAR, being able to detect all of these tombs?
Well, in order to be able to work in Mexico, and I do this archaeological work I do mostly in Mexico. And in order to do that, we have to cooperate with Mexico, with the Mexican government. And so I have government support. The region where I work is a jungle region where there is very little population. And so we have no problems with the population. In fact, we are the largest how do you call it? Employer. We are the largest employer, and people really need the archaeological projects in order to survive. But I've worked in other parts. I have worked in the past in Guatemala and have witnessed tensions because people have thought we would come in order to confiscate the land and that we would cooperate with mining companies, which is a big political issue right now in Guatemala. And many indigenous people fear that their land is taken away by mining, and every time they see somebody with spades and compass and technical equipment on the lands, then they think we are mining people.
I am very interested in how you got to a process of interpreting the symbolic language to spoken sounds. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how you connected or excavated modern indigenous language that you might have encountered to those pictograms so that you determine what sound you're referring to.
Yeah, well, we call these pictograms, actually, we call it writing. It's a script. It's writing like our writing. And in order to read a written text, you need to learn English or French. You need to learn a particular language. Otherwise, you couldn't read the message. Even if you can read the signs, you couldn't read the message if you cannot read the language. For Maya writing, we also need to know the languages. And therefore, we need to be linguists. We have to study the languages which are still spoken today. We have to compare these languages, and the comparison of these languages allows us to reconstruct a proto-language. Because all of the Mayan languages they have a common origin, like a language tree. They have a common origin, and we can reconstruct the early forms of Maya. And This has to be connected then to the symbols, to the signs of this writing system. This is what we call decipherment. And decipherment, the decipherment of the script is a long process because, as you can imagine, at first people just saw these signs and had no idea what these could mean. Over 100 years, people and scientists thought that these signs cannot be real writing, because of course Indians cannot write, and there was no writing in the Americas. This was common knowledge on both sides of the Atlantic. And it was in the 1950s that scholars found that there was a Maya alphabet. That there was a Spaniard, Diego de Landa, a Spanish bishop of Yucatan. He had written a book about life on the Yucatan Peninsula just before the Spanish conquest. And he has written this book with a Maya noble sitting next to him, who still was knowledgeable about the writing system. And Diego de Landa, he did not understand the writing system of the Maya very well, but his Maya informant explained him a little bit. And so this Relación de las Cosas, the Yucatan, this Spanish source, contains the key to understanding Maya hieroglyphic writing.
Thank you so much.
But it's a very fascinating process, and it's not that easy. It's very complex because Maya hieroglyphic writing has about 800 signs, and we can read about 500 or 600, and the rest is being deciphered every couple of months as a new decipherment. It's not like it's Egyptian hieroglyphs where you can say, well, this is a writing system which has been deciphered by one person, Champollion, and this was a great decipherment. In the case of Maya writing, it's a process by which engages many scholars, and every year more people are coming and helping us to decipher Maya script.
Thanks so much.
I've got a question about the mathematics. In the development of complex mathematics, the concept of zero is a key, and not every civilization got that. Do you know how early the Mayans had that? And is it a point where zero appears all of a sudden, or was it always there?
Well, it seems that zero was always there. The first calendrical inscriptions, which we know, are from the 1st century BC, and they are already written with positional notation, which makes the zero necessary. So by 100 BC, the Maya must have had the zero already, and it's a real zero. It's not that it reads me, which means nothing.
I was wondering, has the LiDAR technology detected any major cities, or do you predict that there's somewhere out there are?
Oh yes, there are still cities around, and LiDAR technology could help us to find cities. It has helped us to find cities. In Chaktun, the city which I showed you, has been found through LiDAR. But LiDAR technology is very expensive, and therefore we poor archaeologists can only map a few square kilometers, and then we have no money. And we wish we had more money to really scan the entire forest. We would certainly find hundreds of cities which are still covered by the jungle.
Hello. I was wondering how technology informs your deciphering process.
Yes, technology is very important, digital technology. We are now working on a digital dictionary, hieroglyphic dictionary, and also on automatic sign recognition, which will help us greatly in reading Maya hieroglyphs. But it's also very difficult for various reasons.
I'm going to take 2 more questions and then we'll get everybody upstairs. So.
Thank you for coming to Victoria. Clearly they're agricultural, mainly community. Is there any evidence that they were partaking of the local critters for food?
Yes, well, the Maya didn't have a lot of animals available. No domesticated animals. There was the only domesticated animals they had were dogs and turkeys. And besides that, of course they hunted. Hunting was very important. They hunted deer, pheasant, birds, and peccaries, many animals of the forest which could be eaten. They ate fish and shells played a very important role. But Maya diet was mostly vegetarian. The average diet of an average farmer was just maize, beans, squash, and chilies, and tomatoes, and probably sweet potatoes.
Last question.
Pardon?
Did they eat the dogs? Like they did in
Yes, that they may have eaten the dogs.
Could you just explain a little bit more about social ordering? In cities of 75,000 people, was there anything that you found that would be equivalent to what we call a police force? Or a military that was used for internal control as well as fights with other kingdoms?
That's a very good question. I wish we could answer. We had a good answer for it. Actually, we don't know.
You're not all knowing.
No, but I think this makes Maya archaeology so exciting. That there is still so much more we need to know, and so little we know about this great civilization. This is different from other ancient civilizations. As an archaeologist, you can work on Egypt and Rome. You could add more information, but it would just be adding more and more, and not changing the image. And in the case of the Maya, every time you start to excavate, you will find something completely new which contributes to change the overall image of Maya culture.
Right, Dr. Nikolai.